Okay, this lesson we're going to be looking at enabling or disabling this use delayed follow, and we're also going to add in here our follow delay number. So add in both of these options. Of course, these are outside of our characters array. All right, so use delayed follow, there's a boolean, so that's yes. Follow delay 0.25, which is currently what we have in the game. So let's go over here to our header, or I should say our implementation file, but the at interface part of it. And let's go ahead and just paste in here float follow delay and bool use delayed follow. And then what we've got to do is figure out a good place after we've set up our property list to save those two values. Right here should do. So let's just paste those in. Use follow delay. In fact, we got a lot this lesson, so let's just go ahead and do these as quick as possible. Just paste them in, and there you have it. Okay. Oh, don't forget the equal sign. Always get that error if you don't put that in. All right, now we've got those two values saved. So let's go and figuring out where we're going to put the follow delay is pretty easy. In fact, what you could do is just type in here 0.25, since we are using that number already, and paste it right there. So that'll replace that one. Search for the next time you put that in right there as well. This would be a great time to use replace all, right? All right, now I think we've got all of those, and it's within all these swipe handlers that well, one of the places that we're going to test to see if we are using that delayed follow. So let's put in here if use delayed follow equals yes, then in that case we are going to run the previous line that we have, and while we're here, let's just go ahead and add in a little else statement, and we need to do that a few more times, don't we? So here's our swipe up. Get that one back into place there. Not really an easy way of doing this, is there? Okay, copy that again. And in case you've already forgotten, if you aren't using the follow delay, we're gonna basically kind of just swing these characters into line really quickly. And if you have no interest in doing that at all, well, you still got to hold tight, because this method that we use right here is the same one that we're going to use anytime you pick up a character. So one that is not currently following you, when you make contact with them, you're gonna run this line right here. And that line will look eerily similar to this one right here. So let's just go ahead and paste this back out. I'm going to call this line follow into position. We'll say with direction. It's kind of a long line, sorry. And we've got our direction variable in here, or parameter, I should say. We've got our place in the line, just like we did before, and we're also using our leader's location. So let's copy this now, come over here, and let's find a good place for it. We'll do this in our handle movement section. So put this right at the bottom of it. Okay. And let's just go ahead and head back over here to the level file, and we'll go ahead and now that we've got that set up, we can just call it. So we'll say character follow into position with direction, and that direction we're gonna have to get from over. Oh, well, obviously we know the direction. We're telling them which way to go, sorry. So in this case, it's going to be left, okay? This is our handle swipe left. And then the place, we're going to get that just from our place variable, and Our leader location is going to just be leader dot position. Okay, so we can now do a little cut and paste action with each of these, and on each one of them, all we're changing is the direction. All right, now back over here to our character. We are going to have again our padding, and we can just steal that from right here. In fact, we can take a lot of things. Let's grab all that. Paste that in. All right, so the padding stays the same. Feel free again to change this. You know, if you prefer a little bit more padding. And then if direction is going to equal up, all right, so we're going to make our new position equal to this right here, and I don't think that we're going to make any changes to that at all. So everything on down here stays the same, and then what we're going to do is call, or create, I should say, SK action. Move into line, SK action. This will be a move to. Yet again, we're using the new position, so come to think of it, this line is pretty identical to the other one, although the duration I'm going to make is a little quicker, so that's going to be 0.2, and then we'll just say self run action, move into line. So this time around, we're not setting up a sequence where we stop afterwards. But what we are going to do is call self, and then actually this we can put inside of each one of these statements here. Self it's wanting an NS number here for us. Remember, we had to use that NS number because when we used our perform selector with object, it wanted an object in there. So we just put in here NS number, number with int, and then we can put in our place value. And from here, just paste that into each one of these. And the only difference is this will be move up with place, move down with place, and move right with place. If we do that, and we actually set our playlist to follow delay being no, we'll be able to see what happens there. So let's give it a shot. Come back over here. And again, I think what we should play with is turning on and off the collisions too when we see this effect occur. Okay, so there's each character, so we'll move down. There they are. So they go a little bit quicker into their formations. And that our little ideal X and ideal Y still gets used because you can see that let's see if I can kind of force it to happen. The collisions between each circle still comes into play a little bit, so that can basically keep the objects from like immediately falling into place. For example, if I were to go over here and set up use for collisions to no, and no here, let's run this again. What we should see is them kind of always being like perfectly, see, yep, right in back of them. And actually my my characters are a little too close together, aren't they? Because this probably isn't enough space or padding. There we go. So a little further apart, maybe a little too far apart now. But I just prefer the other way of doing things. Let's try 1.5 here. I like the follow delay. There we go. All right, so let me switch that back. So let's set this to yes, yes, and let's go back to our follow delay, but that does seem to be working. Now our big task for the rest of this video is to isolate blocks of the code that wouldn't run if following was disabled for the character. So let's go over here to our GameData.plist, and let's add in here, let's put in one right at the top, following enabled, and this will be a bool variable. Set that to yes. And by default, your lead character is always going to have following enabled. Okay, so even if you set this to be no, it's you're the leader. All right, doesn't matter. For the rest of them, though, if following enabled equals no, then you're not going to start running around with the leader by default. We'll wait until you get basically tagged in, until the leader touches you. Alright, so now let's go over here to our header file, and we are going to need to set up a property for this, and this of course will be accessible not only to this one class but our level class as well. So we're going to say bool following enabled, and then let's come over here. We're going to need to get that value from the property list. Okay, let's put it right here. Doesn't really matter. Following enabled, of course, we do need to put that underscore in front of it, equals, and then we can just copy all this, paste that in there. Of course, that's going to be a capital F, and then there we go. It's all ready to go. And now I just got to figure out all the different places that we are going to put this in. Let's scroll down to the update method first. So obviously, if your character hasn't been tagged in yet to run around, none of these conditions are going to want to get applied to it. So we'll put if, and then following enabled equals yes, and also we're going to just make sure that if you happen to be the leader, that equals yes, then you're also going to do all these things. Oops. So do an opening bracket here, and then come all the way back down to the bottom, closing bracket. And if you want to put a little note here as to what that closing bracket applies to, you can always just paste back in that line. I find that's often quite useful. And then let's find our swipe handlers. So if, you know what, while we're here, let's just go ahead and copy that. Oh, and you know what, I'm sorry, this should actually be an OR statement. Same thing up here too. Not an AND, that would mean that both conditions had to be true, but an OR. So if either one of those is the case, do what is inside of there. Try to keep this nice and pretty. Okay, and then I believe the next place we're going to have to do that is in our stop in formation method. So obviously if you stopped, but of course this never gets called on the leader, so we don't have to put that there. So if you stopped, but you didn't have all your people in there with you, you wouldn't want this to run. And I suppose we also need to put that up here too. Okay. Now over to the level class, and we'll start up here at the update method. Alright, so within here, within whether or not we're paused, if the character is equal to the leader, well, we still have nothing to do here yet, but else if, and one thing we can check is if character dot following enabled equals yes, then we want to put these lines in here. Otherwise, we don't care about it, because we don't need to push in an ideal X or ideal Y for a character that isn't following the leader. Then let's go down to our contact listener. There it is. Didn't have to go too far, did we? And we are going to check to see if two characters bump into each other. So this is a nice little easy check. What we can do is say if first body dot category bitmask equals, we'll say player category, and alright, so it's not an or statement here, and the other one is also a player category. That means that we'll put a little note in here. Well, we don't need to put a note in there. It'll be kind of obvious. That means two characters bumped into each other, so what we can do is then cast them. So I'll say CS character and character equals CS character. That'll be first body dot node. Do the same thing over here. Character 2, second body dot node, and then I'm going to check here is if character equals leader, else if character 2 equals leader. Basically just checking to see if either one of them is the leader, and then if the first one's the leader, then obviously the second one is not. So then character 2, or actually what I should say is if character 2 dot following enabled equals no, then character 2 dot following enabled equals yes, and then we're going to say character 2 follow into position with direction, and from this we'll grab leader, return direction, place in the line. In this case we'll just make it be 1. And then for the leader location, this will be leader dot position. Okay, do the same thing. Oh, whoops, there we go. Do the same thing over here. Of course, this time around, what we're going to do is just take out the 2, and there we go. Let's see if there's any other notable places that we should be putting in following enabled now. I don't think so. So let's give this a test, and again, as long as our characters aren't initially touching, we should be able to check this out. And by the way, I'm basically just pushing this newest or whatever latest character to enter the line at in the first place behind the leader. And there could also be somebody else following, in which case, you know, they'll just kind of bump into each other, but they'll sort themselves out eventually. Okay, so let's walk around a little bit. That's a good sign already that Nobody's trying to follow us. And boink. So there he goes. Now he's in line with us. And let's go get this other guy. Boink. And sure enough, got our little band of warriors here. Gonna go around and start some trouble. Gonna get them into a line here. Okay. Things seem to be moving well. And by the way, some of you might have noticed that we had a strange thing happening here. Look at this. Tap up on these guys and then I'll move them into a line. Do it again from a stopped position, and look where they end up at. Now why is that? This is kind of one of the things I actually really like about programming is I just quit that, by the way, that's why it crashed. Is debugging little things like that. And oddly enough, the reason that showed up is because I tried to tighten up my code a little bit, and if you remember over here in our CS character class when I had this stop information, I took out these lines from each one of these if or else if statements. But what I did though is that I didn't consider what to do if the current direction was no direction at all. So what was happening was they were, of course, stopped when that occurred, and then you do it again and he moves away. That's because none of these conditions were true, but I set up the CG point outside of these conditions, and by default this would have just been 0, 0. So this still got run, and boom, he went to 0, 0. So there's a couple ways you could deal with this. One would just be to make your CG point, you could have the CG point make equal to, and then by default have it be self.position .x, and of course do the same thing for the y. Another thing, which probably makes a lot more sense, would, because it's essentially still you're still running all this stuff, would be to put a big old if statement inside of here that just says if following enabled equals yes, and current direction does not equal no direction. Okay, and that should solve it. And even this is a little bit different than the way I solved it before. So we'll see. I need to double check this now too. All right, so we're stopped, and then boom. All right, perfect. And we'll just go and check over here too that. And yep. All right, everything seems to be running well now.